guys, it's Pat with RAVEK. Time for another install. Today I'm going to be installing the Apex Street Legal Turn Signal Kit on our Polaris Ranger. That's going to be a little intense sometimes, but if you follow these instructions, it'll be super simple and you'll have your signals turning in no time. So let's get to it. All right, let's get this thing started. First step, move this center cowl from the hood of our Ranger. Here is where we're going to access our bus bar and get our power. Now also, before we get started, I want to mention that this is the brains of the turn signal kit. It's our RAVEK controller. All of our wiring is going to eventually come to this point and get connected. So this is going to be installed up under here as well. But before we get to that, we need to get some power going. So I'm gonna take our power harness and connect it to the Ranger bus bar. Polaris makes this super easy with the bus bar. It's plug and play, which I love. So we have to remove one of these plugs, plug in our power harness to that location, and then start making more connections. So let's get started on that. Hook up our power harness to the Polaris bus bar. That's one thing I love about Polaris. They have a bus bar in here, so it's really plug and play. Remove the cap. Take our power harness from the RAVEK Apex kit. It has a factory style connection. Simply plug in, click it into place. There we go. Now it's time to move on to our controller. Now the RAVEK Apex controller is literally the brains of our operation. Everything's going to get connected to it. And for installation, it's nice to find a clean area, clean up some of this plastic, and get it mounted up out of the way. But before you do that, it's great to make all your connections first, make sure you have enough wire, etc. And then mount it and clean up your wiring. Now for our installation today, I'm gonna leave it lay loose out here in the open so you guys can see how to make all the connections, make sure you're making the right connections, and then get it located up into place. So the first step under here in terms of connections is we need to get power to our controller. Now our power harness that we just plugged into the bus bar is right here. All of our connections and all of our RAVEK kits are labeled. You can see this one here, power in. Our controller also has all labels on the box as well as the connections themselves. So I found my power connection on my controller. Here it is. My power harness, make that connection. So now I'm gonna have power going to my controller. Next step is I'm gonna mount the horn and get that connected as well. Now when you're mounting your horn under here, it's pretty easy to find a factory fastener. Just remove that, install the horn. I'm gonna use this one right down here. It looks like a 10 mil. And we'll get that removed. Grab our horn. That's gonna get mounted into that location. But before I secure it, I'm gonna make my connections between my horn and the controller. There's two steps in making these connections. For the horn in particular, from your power harness to the controller, you'll first make that horn connection. And again, everything is labeled. On the controller, it says horn. On the power harness, it says horn. And then there's another one off the power harness that says horn extension. That will go to the horn itself. So horn to horn, the controller and power harness. I'll grab my extension line. That'll go between the power extension connection and my horn itself. We give you plenty of cable so you can put this horn anywhere, but on this Ranger, it's super convenient to put it right here. So plug in the extension to the harness. Oops, get it oriented the right way. There we go. And then the spades will go to the back side of the horn. It does not matter which connection you make on the horn, red to whichever side, black to the other, nearly completing a circuit. Now my horn's ready to go. And now I'm going to secure it into place, its factory location. It's also important when you mount this horn is that when it's secure, it's not touching anything. Because when a horn goes off, it will vibrate. And if it's touching something, it may sound a little weird, or it may cause a vibration that you don't want. So it sort of needs to float in open space. And while this horn looks small, you'll find out at the end of our install, it's small but powerful, very loud. There, you can always just bend the bracket a little bit to make sure it's floating. I'm good there. All right, on to our next step, and that is going to be installing our front apex lights and the extension harnesses back up to our controller. Next step is to install our apex lights. Now, if you haven't heard me talk about these, hang on a minute, I gotta boast. These things are amazing. They're incredibly bright, they're durable, and the versatility mount them practically anywhere. It's probably the best part. Now, 3 ways to mount an apex light. Let's look at each one of them. I'm going to show you the 3 different ways to mount apex lights to your vehicle. Roll bar mount with a strap, flush mount with adhesive, and flush mount with a screw in. Now, to mount your apex lights to a tube or a roll bar, I'm going to show you the steps. You'll notice we get your apex lights flat back. Included in the kit is this beveled back. We'll want to attach this to the apex light. You can orient your wire on either side, depending on where you're mounting it. And this beveled back, it'll only go on one way. It is tapered. You kind of feel it lock into place. When it's in place, grab your short panhead screws and secure it to the back of the apex light. Now, when you mount an apex light to a round tube, we recommend using a combination of the strap and the 2-sided tape. So to attach our 2-sided tape, there's a non-branded side and a branded side. The non-branded side will go against your apex light. But before we do that, we want to make sure our surface areas are clean. So you're going to first grab your alcohol wipe, and we're going to give our apex light a quick wipe. And you'll also wipe whatever surface area you're going to be mounting the light to as well. We'll let that dry a little bit. You grab your primer wipe. You're going to repeat the process on our apex light and also on the surface area you'll be mounting it to. Now your surface areas are ready for maximum adhesion of this 2-sided tape. Again, blank side against the apex light. What I like to do is just start the back end a little bit. This will allow me to get it lined up and not have it looking wonky when you're done. So if it's looking good, you can just peel back that backing tape and then give it a good squeeze. Now I'm ready to mount this light to our tube. Now with my backing tape applied to my beveled plate, it's time to mount the apex light to my round tube. I'm gonna mount it up high on this tube right here. And just how I applied the backing tape to the apex light, I'm gonna do the same process to the roll tube. So get it started. I like to always work top down. Peel back a little like this. Now I'm gonna go just below this well, but wherever you're mounting it, get it started, and then grab that backing tape and peel back. That way you can keep it straight all the way back. Add a good squeeze. And with round tube mounting, although this 3M 2-sided tape is extremely durable, I mean, you can see that. For added security, we'll take our straps, go through the slot, around the tube, strapped in place. Now my apex light is secured to the roll bar. All that's left to do is plug it in, see if it works. Nice. And we'll check our flash modulator Beautiful. It's that easy, kids. 500 times brighter than your standard razor light. Now all it's left to do is come back in with some zip ties, route this wire so it's not touching anything hot or anything moving, and we're good to go. All right, here are the steps to screw mount your Apex lights to your vehicle. Now we happen to be using a Polaris Ranger, but the process is the same no matter your vehicle. Once you determine where you're gonna mount the Apex light, first step, clean the surface area. So we got our alcoholic swab. You'll notice, looks like we've already had something mounted here. That's because we have. We've been durability testing these Apex lights on this Razor all season long. And so we're gonna pretend those holes aren't there. Next step, take our primer pad and prime the area. Then we'll go to our two-sided tape. We recommend, again, two forms of fastening this. You're gonna use the tape as well as the screws. Nice thing about the tape, these holes are gonna serve as your pilot holes to drill through the material. Remember, non-branded side will go against our Apex lights, so the branded side will go against the vehicle. Make sure it's oriented correctly. If you want your lights, the wide part at the top, wide part of the tape should be at the top, and vice versa. That's how I'm gonna mount this one. So our surface area is clean. Again, I like to start at the top. And if you want, you can place your tape on your vehicle and make a few marks so it is square or lined up exactly where you want it. There we go. Make it easier so it's nice and square. Now, this will serve as your template to drill your holes. Our holes are already there, so we'll pretend I drilled them. Next, take your Apex light. Your 11/32 inch or the larger hole will be where you route your wire. The smaller hole, the 1/4 inch, will be where you secure it with the fastener. So the tolerances are just right. Push our wire through. There we go. Once that's looking good, I can peel this tape off. And a little piece there in the way. Get it lined up. Now, what I like to do now is grab my fastener and route that through the back side before I put the light in place. It just helps me see everything that's going on. I like to get my fastener through the hole, and that's going to help guide my Apex light onto the two-sided tape. Otherwise, if you put your light down on the tape before your fastener's in place, you may have struggle getting it started. Now, my fastener's started, I'm on the tape, I'm square, give that a good push. Now I can grab my 4mm from the backside and secure it. And remember to put your fender washer on the backside. Give it a few turns, get it snug. That'll cinch our Apex light down to that two-sided tape. And we are ready to plug it in, give it a test. Nice clean install. I mean, that's not going anywhere. We'll plug it in. Nice. We have modulator in line. Got the flash. There you have it. Surface mount Apex lights with the screw-in method. Now, another way to install Apex lights is a flat surface mount using just the two-sided tape, no screws. Just a quick, easy way to do it. If you got a place where routing the wire, you can kind of hide it nice, makes sense. It's a perfect way to do it. All right, to do this, pretty simple. First thing you want to do is you want to take your alcohol wipe, just clean up the light assembly itself. And given that it's probably new, it's pretty clean. And then you're also going to want to take this alcohol wipe and clean whatever surface of the vehicle you're going to be mounting it to. All right. Once that's done, you're going to take your promoter or your primer wipe. This is going to as it sounds, promote better adhesion. So do the same to your light and the same to your surface area. Once that's done, you're going to thread your two-sided tape through your wire harness here from the Apex light. There's two holes you can line it up, you'll see on your Apex light. One hole is for mounting, one hole is for the wiring harness. Again, your tape is tapered, it'll only go on there one way, and you'll want to use the non-branded side against the light, as such. So I'll peel back the backing tape, stick this to my light, peel the tape off again, adhere it to the vehicle. And it can be a little tricky with the wire in there. What I like to do is get it started like this, peel back a portion of it, get it square. And then kind of rip it right around that wire coming from the Apex light. And get it lined up, give it a good press, and now we are ready to install this light on any flat surface you choose. And I'm going to position it right here. I'm going to run the wire down below the fender lip and connect it to the harness. So before I do, I want to take my alcohol wipe. You clean up the surface a little bit, especially if you got like Armor All or something on there that you've been cleaning your vehicle. Now to apply the Apex light surface mount to the vehicle, I'm going to again put it right here. I've cleaned this surface area with my alcohol wipe and my primer. I've got my two-sided tape attached to my Apex light. I've peeled back the vacuum tape part way so I can handle it on the backside without getting all sticky. Get my light lined up where I want it. It's centered. Once it's all in place, I could peel the rest of the backing tape away. My tape removed, give it a good push. And now before I button everything up and get my wires routed cleanly, I think it's time to give it a test first. As AC/DC said on Let There Be Rock, let there be light. 300% more light to be accurate. That is gonna look sick. Well, as you can see, installing Apex lights is really quite easy, and the versatility, that's the best part. Now I chose to mount our Apex lights right on the front bumper with the strap. Next step is to install our extension harness from our lights to our controller. Now on a turn signal kit, the extension harnesses are labeled left and right side, so make sure you get the right side to the correct side. Otherwise, the blinker's gonna be going this way, sort of like my brain does sometimes, right? All right, simply plug in the connectors to your Apex light. And from here, I'm gonna route this wire back up to my controller. Now, there's lots of ways to route the wire on this Ranger. Most important thing to remember, keep it away from anything hot or anything rotating. Again, I'll route it loosely up through here, and I'll come back in when it's all done and working properly, clean up the connections, add some zip ties, make everything tidy. Our next step is to route our rear extension harnesses and our brake input line. Now on the Polaris Ranger, the best thing to do is to run it below the cab components here. We're gonna remove a few panels to do that. Remember, we're coming from up underneath the front of the cowl, that's where our controller is. We're gonna get our lines back to the taillights. To do that, we're gonna remove this center cup holder. This happens to be a North Star, so there's an extra panel here where the heating assembly is contained. And then this large center panel here as well. When I lift up the seat, access my battery, and I'll be able to run my wires up through here and back underneath below the box. All of these panels are held in place with just push pins. I recommend, hey, get one of these push pin plier pullers. They're awesome. Of course, you can always use the old school method of flathead screwdriver, but once you try one of these, you'll never go back. So let's remove these panels. All right, let me show you where we routed our rear extension harnesses and brake input line. So starting up here underneath the front cowl by the controller. Here's our three lines. start off going through the boot and the firewall. That'll bring us inside the cab. Let's go in there and take a look. Firewall, that's where the boot is. Here are our lines. Came through that boot, and then we dropped straight down and behind the dash. And below here, here's our lines coming down. We're gonna follow the factory harness down the center hump. We remove this panel. Come inside alongside the battery tray. Here we are inside the battery tray. And then out through the rear here, behind the cab. Again, we'll come back in and clean up all these lines, get them zip tied in place once we have everything working. So let's go back behind the cab. Behind the cab, you'll see that here's our lines. We're gonna follow this factory harness right here. All the way back of the box. Here's our lines. And once we get to this point, we'll split to the left and right sides. Remember, the brake input line is going to come over here to the driver's side. The extension harnesses are labeled left and right. Now with our rear extension and brake input lines routed, it's time to move our next step, and that is to remove the rear taillight assembly on each side. To do that, 10mm deep well socket and a 1/4 inch ratchet, simply 2 fasteners on each side. So just pop out. We're gonna disconnect factory harness from the taillight assembly. And now we're gonna install our TY connector. Now TY connector, as you can see, has multiple connections coming off of it. I'll explain each one of these as we go along. But the first thing you want to do is to install the TY connector between the factory harness and the taillight assembly. These connections are just like the factory. So simply plug until you hear click. This end will go into my taillight assembly. Now off of this TY harness, you can see a few connections. First of all, off is these 2 spade connectors. This goes to your accessory lighted license plate holder that's included in the turn signal kit. I'm not going to get that installed here today, but if you choose to do so, this is where you're going to make that connection. Also coming off this connection is an Apex light extension harness. If you add Apex lights to your Ranger, this is where you're going to plug them in. Also off this TY harness, you'll see 2 other connections. This is going to connect to our brake line input and to our extension harness from the controller. So I'll get this plugged into the assembly. And next, I'm going to route my wires up from below. Now on the passenger side, you'll notice that the TY harness is a little bit more simplistic. Process is exactly the same. Connect to the factory harness. Make my connection to my extension harness from the controller. And then to my taillight assembly. Again, remember, if you want to add Apex lights, it's as simple as plugging into this portion of the TY harness, you're good to go. Get this reinstalled, and then we're going to move on to our indicator light harnesses. We're now moving on to our turn signal indicator harnesses. Now those are going to run from our controller up underneath the cowl to our gauge cluster. Now it's best to start at the gauge cluster, get the connections made, go back through the firewall up onto the controller. So we're going to need to remove this gauge cluster first. It's easier. First tilt down the steering wheel all the way. There's 2 push pins on the back of the cluster. Remove those with my push pin plier puller. Already got the other one out. I'll just tip the gauge cluster towards you. 2 tabs at the bottom, and it snaps out. Tip it. Connectors at the back. Let's give that a squeeze. Pull that off. Set the cluster out of the way. These 2 harnesses here, we're going to install into this connector and then route up to the controller. So I'll show you how to do that. We'll get in here a little tighter with the camera show you how this comes apart. In your instructions, it'll also say this number 6 will be for the right turn indicator, and number 7 will be for the left. Again, your indicator harnesses are labeled. This is right, so this is going to go in number 6. To do so, we're just going to simply insert it into that hole. You can use your precision screwdriver. Give that a little extra nudge. Like so. And it should go into, you almost hear a click. Make sure it's seated. Now that one's installed. Come back with my left turn indicator harness and the Molex pin. Go into the number 7 location. Same process. Get that pin started. Take your small screwdriver. Give it a little push. Make sure it's in all the way. Make sure it's seated. There. Now it's seated. I can close this up. I'll get these wires routed through the firewall back up to the controller and we'll reinstall our gauge cluster. Now, if you're having trouble getting your Molex pins inserted all the way into the connector, you may need to remove this little translucent cap. To do that, simply push in with your precision screwdriver the white area on each side. And slide it off. That'll allow you to insert those pins all the way. Here is a fully inserted set of pins. You can see they're all aligned up with the top of the white area. Once you get your pin in, this translucent keeper simply snaps back into place. All right, next step of our installation are the rocker switches. 2 come in the kit. One is for your hazards and your horn, and the other, of course, is for the turn signals. Lots of options usually on a Ranger on where you want to install them. I'm going to choose right here in the middle. You may just have some blanks that you just have to pop out, or in my instance here, I also had to cut one out. Find your location, get the openings ready for installation. Pull this out. What you're going to want to do is route your wires through the opening, install the rockers. Wires are going to go up through the firewall and up to our controller. All right, I have my wires pushed through the firewall. Next step is to install the switches into the opening. Really quite simple. Into the opening. Maybe a little tight. I always like to push right in the middle until they snap into place. There you go. And my turn signal. There. Those are going to be great. All right, next step, go up to the controller and make all our connections. Now it's time to make all of our connections to the RAVEK controller. I'm going to start with the front apex lights and our indicator harnesses that we just installed. So remember, the indicator harnesses are going to send the signal to our indicator lights. So these go in line in essence. And everything's labeled. This is front right. And this is front right for my controller. So this will snap into the indicator harness, and then my extension harness going to my apex light, front right here, will go on the other side. There's the right one in place. And we'll do the same with the left. Remember, just push to here, click. All right, so the front is connected. I'm going to move to the rear of the vehicle off the controller. This is the rear brake light and running light connection. They are labeled. Again, left and right. Make sure you put them in the proper position or you'll have your blinkers backwards. Push to here, click. Again, these are going to the rear extension harnesses. And my right one. Lastly, we will connect our rocker switches to the controller. These are the larger lines. Again, they are labeled as well. Here's my turn switch. and my hazard horn switch. That's it. All the connections are made. Again, before you get started, kind of identify where you're going to mount this controller under the dash. I'm going to first make sure everything is working, and then I'm going to come back in. I'm going to secure this with the zip ties included in the kit. There's also some two-sided tape that can go back here, so you can secure it somewhere, clean it up, mount it, and then get your zip ties out, clean up all the wiring, get it secured out of the way, make sure it's touching nothing hot, nothing that's moving or could vibrate, and put a hole in the wiring. So what's left next is to test the kit. Well, there you have it, the RAVEK Apex turn signal kit for the Polaris Ranger XP. It is the full Monty. You get the turn signals, you get the hazard lights, you get the pulsating brakes, you get the horn, and if you want to add it, you get the limited license plate holder as well. Everything's included in one kit. You can get this kit and so much more on our website at ravek.com. Hope this video helps, and of course, I'll see you on the trail.